thanks for joining me today for episode 3 of my size inclusive sewing bee pattern roundup. So if you haven't watched before, what I will do is try and find the same or similar patterns or patterns with a close inspiration in as good a size range as I can manage. And it's split into 3 parts, this video. So the first one is for the pattern challenge, so finding a pattern to match that. Then we have the made to measure challenge, which is fit into 2 parts. One which is garments inspired by things that the competitors have made, and then the other part is other patterns that I think could fit into the theme. So we're going to start off with the the pattern challenge this week. The theme for this week was icons, and they started off by asking them to make a sort of version of the iconic Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress. So that's a jersey wrap dress, really popular shape, and there was loads of choice for patterns that are size inclusive for this. So I believe the one they used is an actual, I think there was like a Vogue pattern or something that was in collaboration with Diane von Furstenberg, and they re-released it, I believe, not that long ago. So I suspect that's the version that they used. I did generally find this week that a lot of the patterns used throughout were from the big 4, and I was a bit disappointed in that because it made the job of finding things difficult, although I have found some suitable things, but obviously the size range in big 4 is not great. Yeah, and this is definitely the first week where I think a lot of stuff was from the big 4. Anyway, I have found 4 stretch wrap dress options in a decent size range. The reason I have 4, because some of them are quite similar, is because you might already have these patterns, or I know that sometimes people have a certain pattern brand where they know the block fits them well, and things like that, so it can just be a little bit more, like a little bit easier, a bit less extra work if there's a brand that you're already confident with who do a suitable pattern. So that's why I've put all 4 in, even though they're all fairly similar in terms of design. So first up, we have the Cashmere Appleton dress. Picture will go here. So again, really classic wrap dress. Where we know Cashmere are really good is that they offer cup sizes and that the fitting is normally pretty good. And with a wrap dress, it can be a little bit tricky to get that crossover to be great. I have not made the Appleton. I cannot for the life of me think what it's called. Cashmere have another dress that has like a faux wrap top, so it looks like it's wrapped, but it isn't. But when I remember what that's called, I'll try and put that in the description below. But it used the same technique in terms of the elastic in the neckline, which they used on the show. Right, so that's the Cashmere Appleton. That goes up to a bust and a hip of 62 inches. We then have the Sew Over It Meredith dress. So again, just a really nice, simple wrap dress silhouette. I know a lot of people make a lot of Sew Over It patterns, so this might be one you already have. This goes up to a bust of 57, a waist of 50, and a hip of 60 inches. Now, we have 2 others, one of which I only became aware of because Bex is one of the founding Curvy Coven members and just a general font of knowledge and great sewist, and she recommended one of these patterns which I had not heard of, but I looked it up and she really could vouch for it, and so I wanted to add that one in here as well. So the brand name, I don't think I can say. I'm going to say Becklet, but it's spelled Beklaedt, and it's called the Ahorn dress, and again, jersey wrap dress, great, bust of 56.7, waist of 50.4, and hip of 60.6. We love those random measurements. And then the last one I have is a little bit different, but it has a collar, which I think some of the DVF dresses actually had as well, but the pattern they used for this challenge didn't, but I just thought it was a nice feature. So this is the Style Arc Leah dress, which goes up to a bust of 67 3/4, a waist of 61 inches, and a hip of 70 1/8 inches. So there are 4 really good options. I think 3 out of the 4 are brands that I've made stuff from before and have found really good. And obviously the 4th one comes really highly recommended. So I think that's not a bad start, is it? So now we can get to the Made to Measure challenge, where they were making outfits inspired by Versace. Now, as I said, most of the patterns they've used are big four patterns, and it took ages looking for the right patterns this week because I actually wasn't looking for a match. I was looking for things that were sort of similar, and some of the designs are things that just don't really come in, like you just don't tend to find a lot of patterns with extended sizing with those sorts of designs, which is a shame. But I then have, so I did find a few things, and then I think I found some really good ones for the own choice, other things you can make in that theme. So we're going to start off with Orla's outfit. So this was a butterfly inspired, and it was like a corset top and a skirt with two little slits in it, and she'd sort of hung chains. So obviously the chains you can just add yourself to whatever pattern. For the top, I could find a few corset patterns. I've actually got a couple of corset patterns myself that I haven't made yet, but they're not strapless, and the neckline was sort of wrong. So the only one I could find that sort of seemed suitable and had a decent size range was the Mood Society cerise corset. Now, I'm going to say that I have spoken to a few people about Mood over the past few months, and I think the drafting can be really hit and miss. And I have not made this pattern, so I cannot vouch for it as a pattern. I don't know. It is a corset, so it's a strapless corset straight across. It's got lots of panels going down, so that does make me think maybe that makes the fitting a bit easier because you can sort of pinch out of certain panels. You would have to adapt the bottom a little bit. So her corset basque top had like a V shape. Again, I could find other tops with a V shape at the waist, but then the top was completely different or the shape wasn't quite right. So this I thought would be an option, and it is a free pattern, so there's no harm in giving it a go. Yeah, and that goes up to a bust of 59.5, a waist of 51.5, and a hip of 63.5. Now for the skirt, again, there are actually lots of ways you could easily hack this skirt. The one that came to mind for me was the By Hand London Anna dress, because it has a skirt where the pieces are in sort of panels, and there are two, so there's like a front panel of fabric with these two seams down the front, and then one of them becomes a split anyway, so I don't really see why you couldn't just split the other seam as well. And then that's a really easy, I think if the dress is already split into parts, into panels, then it's not easy, it's not difficult to sort of just add a slit into the skirt. So that's what I went with. By Hand London goes up to a bust of 61.25, a waist of 56.25, and a hip of 63.25. So those are some ideas for Orla's butterfly outfit. Now Yasmin made this sort of like little slip dress thing with leather strapping over the top. And when I saw that they were going to do a Versace challenge last week, so before the episode came out, I actually went online and tried to find some Versace-esque patterns, because I would use them. It just helps me get ahead a bit, but also it means I could use them in the like other options bit. And one of the ones I saved was a harness pattern. Now, a lot of the harness patterns I found, the size ranges are like not amazing, but actually I think it's probably really easily adjustable because ultimately it's just different lengths of straps, so you can sort of lengthen or shorten straps. And things like bust, it's like as long as it fits the under bust and like around, it doesn't matter if it goes to the full bust and things like that because it's sort of going around those areas. So I found, after doing a bit of research, I found a place called Evie Le Louvre, and they had two different harness options. They had one that they call, I think, what is it called? The Scarlet Strap Bralette. So that's just like a more simple one. And then they have the Raven harness, which is more of like a full body situation. Again, with making harnesses, if you're using just straps, I feel like you could really play around with the design to be whatever you want. So I feel like once you maybe got your head around the, like how you connect bits together and things like that, I think you could have a lot of fun in making this something personal to you. So Yes, so I have linked those patterns. It was actually deceptively hard to find them because if you put in harness patterns, you get a lot of dog harnesses. And turns out there are absolutely loads of dog harness patterns. There are slightly fewer human harness patterns. But I thought this would be a really good version to go over the top of an outfit. And as I said, I think once you get to grips with how the bits fit together, you could actually just make your own sort of design. Yeah. So then we had Novello. So Novello made this one shoulder like drapey top. Now I think a lot of tops like that are actually draped onto a stand. I don't know if that's what she did, but I think that is often the case. I found a couple of options. So there was one by Fibre Mood called the Halley top. So this does not have as much, it has a bit of drape coming down from the shoulder, but there wasn't sort of as much volume in the actual top. But I feel like you can maybe do a bit of slash and spread. And then sort of pin the tucks more in the shoulder, so you can almost do like pleats or something. And then if you had a bit of extra fabric here, that would then maybe hold the shape more, is what I was thinking. So that's one option. And then I also found a tutorial which I will link below. So this is by Ivy's Patterns, and it's a tutorial to draft your own, which is obviously great because then you can do it to your own measurements, which is a win-win for everyone. So there are a couple of options there for that, which I thought was nice. Now, next up, we had Glendora's dress. So this was like a halter neck dress, quite a simple silhouette, I'd say, quite fitted. And I was struggling to find something suitable for this. I could find some halter necks that were size inclusive. They were all like a more relaxed fit. So they would gather up here, but it was more like a beachy dress rather than an evening dress. And I'd sort of given up hope of finding a match. And then, again, in the Curvy Coven today, someone mentioned a new pattern. So this is a brand called Sister Face Studio. So they are a new to me pattern company. This is only their second pattern released. And it's called the Cassia Halter Top and Dress. And it has this nice halter at the front and open back, so with lacing across it. And you can either make a top which stays quite fitted, and they have a shorter top, and then like an asymmetric one, like sort of goes down like this at the bottom. And they also have one where you have a waist seam with a gathered skirt, which I thought was really nice as well. So that miraculously just came into my life today when I most needed it. And that goes up to a bust of 60.6, a waist of 55.1, and a hip of 65.1. So again, I think that's pretty good. And it looked really cute. That's definitely a pattern brand to look out for. We then had Jess. So Jess was inspired by a dress that Beyonce had previously worn, which was sort of a looser silhouette underneath, and then with this like ribbon corset thing at the waist on top of that. And I presume she maybe self-drafted the corset detail. So I found a couple of options for the lower layer. So for the top, you could either do the By Mason Sicily slip, which comes as a top or a skirt, a top or a dress, sorry, that has that sort of cowl neck line, and it's either got options of thin or thick straps. The size range is okay, it's not great. I have made it, I fit into like the top size. It goes up to a bust of 54, a waist of 46, and a hip of 56. And then there's also the Nina Lee Alameda, which goes up also to a bust of 54, a waist of 47, and a hip of 57. And this, again, is a really cool, nice bias cut dress with that cowl neckline. So I think this will have been a top. So I think it was like a top version of that. And the skirt was a handkerchief skirt. So when the hem is sort of all up and down. Again, you can find tutorials to how to draft your own handkerchief skirt all over Google. But if you didn't want to do that, a suitable pattern would be the Style Up Canterbury. It doesn't have sort of as much volume and as many levels as the skirt that Jess made, but I think it gives you the effect of that hem and just means you don't have to draft it yourself. So that goes up to a waist of 61 and a hip of 70 and 1/8 inches. And then we had Gaynor. Now, Gaynor did this dress. It was like a jersey dress. One shoulder but with a sleeve. and it had this little cutout situation, sort of from the back, just going around the waist. And this again was one of the dresses that I had saved as Versace inspiration prior to watching the episode. And this is the Gunnar Deathridge Persephone dress. And I actually think that this dress is better than the one used in the show. Firstly, because it's way more size inclusive, but also there are loads of options that make it really cool. So it's 4 stretch fabrics. It has the one shoulder with a sleeve option, although you can also do it just with 2 sleeves. It has lots of ruching, which gives it an interesting shape. So it's very like form-fitting, but I think the ruching just like really draws the eye. It does not have a cutout, but I think will live. Do you know what I mean? There is a choice of different lengths, and the way the shape is given to the skirt is just, I just think it's a really gorgeous dress. And a really nice way to get that sort of like a really bodycon shape, but the ruching means, because for me, like, I would never wear a really tight dress that was just like plain, because I just wouldn't feel comfortable in it. But with ruching, you can sort of draw the eye to the places you want to and away from the places you don't necessarily want to. So I just think it's a really cool and a really beautifully designed dress. So there'll already be a picture up here for you to see. It goes up to a bust of 57, a waist of 51, and a hip of 60. And then we had Kit. So poor Kit had to switch his model at the last minute, but did great. And the sort of key feature, I'd say, of this outfit was the high-low skirt. Now, sorry if you can hear that, there's thunder in the background. Now, again, you can draft your own. There's a good tutorial, which I will link below, by Montoya Mayo on her blog, with like links to videos and things of how to draft your own. Her skirt looks amazing. But also, again, if you can't be bothered, By Hand London Flora dress also has a high-low hem, and that goes up to a waist of 60 3/4 and a hip of 67 3/4. So again, it's like, if you can't be bothered to draft your own, there are options out there. Again, it is drafted as a dress, so you'll just need to sort out a little waistband situation. But I always think that's fairly straightforward, right? So yeah, those are the ones that I found. I did have a look for something like the JLo inspired one with a big cutout, but nothing sort of came to mind that was that similar. But obviously, if I find it at a later date, or if you maybe know one, let me know. So now we can go on to the other dresses and other bits and bobs that I found that I thought could also have fit into this theme. So we start off with a couple of Stylark numbers. So one of them is just a really simple, it's the Kingsley bias cut dress. It's a nice, simple slip dress, very sort of 90s. Again, you could do things sort of with chains over the top, or cutouts if you wanted, or whatever. There are lots of things you could do with this. But I just thought it'd be a nice, simple dress. You can make a nod to the theme with that. That goes up to bust. In fact, both of these next 2 patterns go up to a bust of 67 3/4, a waist of 61, and a hip of 70 1/8. So the next is also a Stylark dress. This one's a bit more like Rogue, but it's the Jerry dress, which is designed for denim, and it's very like fitted and top stitched. But I figure you don't have to make it in denim. Although you can maybe still make it Versace in denim. I don't know if you styled it the right way. But I thought you could make it in like a leather or a leatherette with like gold. So it has buttons basically that all the way down the front. It's really fitted. And I just think with the styling, you could make it look very Versace with some like gold buttons and yeah, maybe like black leather or like a dark denim. I think would look really cool, and I think it fits into the Versace aesthetic. At times has been quite sort of like I don't know, like sort of quite a sexy fitted silhouettes, which is why I sort of thought that dress could work. We then have 2 more patterns from Gunnar Deathridge. So I actually went directly to his website because he just popped into my head. He was, I think it was Project Runway he was on, or something like that. He's one of the designers from one of those design shows who has done amazingly well, and he's always been really good in terms of sizing. So one is the Calliope dress. So this has a really deep V-neck. It's got lots of volume in the skirt, and there's a slit in the skirt. It's got these big sleeves. Again, it's sort of got that like sexiness, but it's less of the really fitted look. It's a bit more ethereal. And I think if you look at a lot of the red carpet dresses that they've designed, they obviously have the ones that are really like sort of overtly sexual in that way. And then they have ones that are like more like this, so where they've got a bit more, it's a bit more subtle maybe, apart from the fact there's a massive deep V in it. That's less subtle, isn't it? But yeah, I just think it's a really, really nice statement dress. And the other one I came across was the Renaissance Bustier. So this is a corset, it's got cups, it has off the shoulder sleeves, which are optional, and little straps. And have I missed anything about it? Lace up back. It's got that V at the waist. And again, I think you could do lots of cute things with like chains and things if you wanted to, or you could make the version that on his website is really like romantic. So you've sort of got options there, but I thought that was a cool look. Then I went to Charm Patterns. So this is Gertie's pattern company who make lots of sort of vintage inspired dresses and other things. And I went for the Hollywood dress, which can also be made as a robe. And so this is like, you can either make it sleeveless or the robe version with sleeves. It's got like a deep V. Again, it's got lots of like ruching. It's got like a high slit in the leg. Yeah, so again, it's the sort of thing where I think it gives you that structure and shaping, but it also like, it sort of covers you where you want, and then, but also you get to like show a bit of leg, show a bit of cleavage. Do you know what I mean? Nice. That goes up to a bust of 62, a waist of 56, and a hip of 64. The robe is an expansion, so I think you might have to buy that separately. Like, I think the dress is the main pattern, and then you buy the robe add-on if you want it. And then we have two more. So one is Lilypad Designs, the Canaan Bustier dress. And this is, so Lilypad Designs mostly have underwear patterns, so like bras and pants and stuff like that, but they have this one dress pattern and I think it's so gorgeous. And it has basically a bustier top and then lots of different options for the skirts. You can have sleeves, you can have strapless, you can have straps. You can, yeah, the skirts can be different lengths, and they use, I'm sure I wrote this down somewhere. Yeah, there's like an internal bra structure to the top. So it's like, because it's obviously been made by an underwear designer, the bustier is like the real deal. And again, there are lots of ways you could interpret this to make this more or less Versace, I guess. And then last up, we have another one that was brought to my attention in the Curvy Coven group today. And this is, so the brand is called The Crafty Witch, but crafty is spelled C-R-A-E-F-T-Y. So I don't know if you're supposed to say like crafty or something else, don't know. And it's called the Aphrodite Fashion Corset. And this is sort of a corset, sort of a harness. And it basically, you have like a corset around the waist and then the straps go up the sides and up here. It is designed to be well worn over clothing. So it's sort of like an underbust corset and then it's got like the straps. Yeah, and it is designed for, so you know, in a lot of costuming you'd have, it's called stays that you'd wear like over the top of something. So it's designed with that in mind. So it's like a modern, like it's almost like modern stays, but it's, I would say it's between a corset and a harness. And I just thought this was kind of cool. So it's worth having a look. Again, that's a new to me brand that popped up today, but I thought it sort of fit in with, we've got that mix between, they have the part of their aesthetic that's a bit like tougher, so with the sort of harnesses and chains and stuff like that, and then they've got the more like glamorous side. So I've tried to give you a mix of both, and hopefully that is helpful. So again, I really enjoyed reading your comments under my last couple of videos. So again, if you have any ideas of patterns, can you think of anything that to you says Versace? Obviously, as we saw from the challenge from Kaz's dress, it's like, that is the thing when they do these themes. So previously they've obviously had like pleats and athleisure, which are both quite close. It's very clear instructions, whereas inspired by can mean all sorts of things. So it's sort of easier and more difficult all at once. But I wanted to give you some options that I found, and I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you for next week's vlog. All right, take care. Bye.